Hello folks, and welcome to this week's Hi-Fi News, etc. I have some trivia for you, music trivia in a moment. Then I will give you some Hi-Fi news. And then I have a hint and tip, which is also a bit of a rant, I suppose. I get them now and again. I am afflicted by the odd rant. I'm going to give you a gentle one-ish at the end of this video. Anyway, trivia. And we are changing the subject to media studies this particular week. And the question is this: what was the 1970 #1 hit that was only cleared for radio play on the BBC after the singer had made a special journey across the Atlantic to overdub 2 syllables on a controversial brand name? So here's one to think about. Hey, one more time. What was the 1970 #1 hit that was only cleared for radio play on the BBC after the singer had made a special journey all the way across the Atlantic to overdub 2 syllables on a controversial brand name? So what I'm really asking for here, well, I suppose I'm asking for 3 answers. Firstly, what was the name of the band that made the single? What was the name of the single itself? And what was the brand name inside the actual single that caused all the trouble? So, bit of a job for you this time around. Please, no Googling, just a bit of fun. And if you Google it, it will ruin the whole thing, I'm sure. So, right at the end of this video, I will give you the answer. Until then, Hi-Fi News. And first up, a bit of a conundrum. Koetsu, the high-end cartridge people, have they closed their doors? It seems so. I'm sure that many of you, or at least some of you, will have heard the sad news that the high-end cartridge manufacturer Koetsu, based in Japan, has closed its doors for the last time. Thing is, though, I've yet to see an official announcement of this event. Maybe by the time you're seeing this video, there will be some official announcement. But as I'm making this video, there is no indication of any closure. I've had a look at the .com website. I've looked at a couple of larger retailers of Koetsu in the UK and elsewhere, and I don't see any indication. Browsing the internet, I can't find any news at all. In fact, that doesn't mean it's not true though, just that there's no official announcement yet. Apparently, according to one Facebook post, and this didn't appear on April 1st, incidentally, it's appeared a few days before, the information apparently was leaked via the UK distributor Absolute Sound, who handle a gamut of high-end hi-fi components. If the leak is true, that leak says that the original family, who have thus far had complete control of the company, cannot continue running the business as is. I think it's an age thing. Actually, it might be a death thing, because the son of the original owner, I think it was, he died in his early 80s last year. So the remaining family, so I hear, do not want to sell Koetsu as a going concern. Reportedly, the fear is that Koetsu itself would only be diluted as a company if the family were not involved, and hence the company products would sort of wander off the pathway and there would be compromises and all that negative stuff. So without any family members involved, they'd think the company would be reduced to nothing but a kind of meaningless label. Now, if that's the case, it's very sad indeed. I do like Koetsu as a brand, and I like or liked what they do, depending if they're still around or not. Despite that, it's been quite a while since I've reviewed a Koetsu cartridge. If you want to check one of my reviews on a Koetsu cartridge, I'll put a link below and you can have a little look. Next up we have a CD player from the Italian outfit Gold Note, and this one is called the CD10. This is a compact player with a mechanism supplied by Stream Unlimited. I think come from Austria. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. I think it's Austrian, that company. Anyway, based on the AKM AK4493 DAC chip and supporting 24-bit 192, the chassis is provided in black, silver, or gold and measures 80mm by 200 by 260mm. At the rear of the chassis, you'll find coax and optical inputs and outputs. You also get unbalanced RCAs and balanced XLR outputs as well. On the front is a small output touchscreen window and a multi-function rotary knob, and you can use this CD player in a preamp mode too. Price I think it's €2,000 and £1,800. Next, we have a headphone amplifier from Serbia and the Headonia 300B from Auris. This is a new 7-watt valve-powered head amp called the 300B because, yes, it's based on 300B valves. It's also powered by amorphous CC core transformers and apparently perfectly matches the impedance of your headphones every time, although the company is not saying how. Contained within an aluminium chassis, there's some good parts in here, including Alps potentiometers, Lundahl transformers, Mundorf capacitors, the whole thing. The included software actually also tells you how long the amplifier has been operating, plus something called the tube timer, which monitors the lifespan of the valves on the actual machine itself. The head amp can also be operated in preamp mode. You also get a remote control, and that can be charged via a built-in USB-C port. Price, well, it ain't cheap, folks. I have a dollar price here of $13,000. Next up we have Bang & Olufsen and the BioConnect Core, which is a kind of streaming box that can be connected to older B&O speakers. The company talks about 30-year-old speakers, for example, that have no connectivity options but can be turned into wireless speakers with this little box. Now, this is not a new concept or idea, but it's good to see B&O getting in on the act. Hence, if you have a B&O app, you can stream music to your older speakers with this little box. You can also connect those same older speakers to a TV, for example, wirelessly. The BioConnect Core, as it's called, includes connectivity options such as PowerLink and USB. I have three prices here. I have £999 or €1,099 or $1,150. That's your HiFi news. Let's have a hint, a tip. Now, this one is a little bit different, which I say that every week, don't I? This is a little bit different. I've just realized that. Next time I'll do a normal one, which I suppose then will be, by definition, compared to everything else, a little bit different. Anyway, stabilizers. I want to talk about stabilizers. You know, those heavy chunks of metal which you stick on top of your turntable. So, for example, this is a stabilizer, has a bit of weight to it. This one is actually from HRS, from the USA, and it's very nice. And in fact, this one is a bit different because there's some polymer at the bottom here which has a damping effect. Often stabilizers, sometimes they're just made out of metal. I've got one or two somewhere that I couldn't find for this video, which are just pure steel, like a shape, a handle, and a blobby bit at the bottom, and it's pure weight and nothing else. That's the kind of thing you would normally get with a stabilizer. There's a little hole at the bottom here that fits over the spindle at the center of the turntable, and that's it. The idea is that the weight, the mass of the actual stabilizer provides a sort of damping, calming effect, initially on the bearing, but also the platter itself and the record, because there's vibrations all over the place, and it just helps to damp the whole shebang, basically. Now, I've talked a lot, really, about stabilizers over the months and the years. I actually talked about them recently in the modded Strata mat, the Origin Live high-end master Strata, which I did a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned stabilizers in that modding video. Now, the thing about stabilizers is this: they exist to fix something. That is, if you've got a problem with your turntable, some sonic issue, this stabilizer may very well sort it out. It may just need some damping, some control. This is designed to fix a problem. So that's why I would buy a stabilizer to correct an error, to make up for a lack of fine tolerance on the bearing, perhaps. Maybe there's an age issue where those fine tolerances as was have now relaxed a little bit, widened to some extent. Maybe there's some things that wobble on a micro level that should not be wobbling, and this stabilizer may help the situation. Maybe you have a new turntable, but the bearing isn't really up to scratch. So again, this will help to damp the vibration from that bearing. I thus have a problem if I see a brand new turntable for sale and it comes with a stabilizer out of the box. And when that happens, I have to ask this: why? Why? Why is it there? It's not an essential item like a tone arm or a platter or even the feet. Why has this stabilizer been included in the box? Just what problem is it supposed to be fixing? To me, seeing a stabilizer in a turntable box, it's like an admission of guilt. It's the turntable manufacturer saying, we've cocked up. There's a basic fundamental problem with our turntable design. Another example, it's a bit like a day one patch on a piece of computer software, where they say, darn it, this program still has a few bugs left in it. Here's a patch to fix it. That kind of thing. That's what stabilizers do. They fix problems. Now, in the recent HiFi news, etc. on Patreon, I recently featured a Nagra turntable in that video. It was a couple of weeks ago now. And the turntable itself, well, it was expensive. I think it was about $128,000, something like that. I haven't checked, but there was something in that area. Now, the problem is Nagra supply a stabilizer out of the box for that expensive turntable. Not this one, but one of their own. Now, to me, that says one of two things. Either this turntable has a basic design flaw and the stabilizer is here to hopefully fix it, which is scandalous for the price, if so. Or they might be saying, we don't know what we're talking about, and we've chucked this stabilizer in the box to cover our backsides. Oh, and by the way, it looks kind of nice, and we hope you'll be impressed. Finding a stabilizer in a turntable box is a bit like passing the interview to be an accountant and then being handed a well-stocked first aid kit in a large box, along with a brisk handshake and a welcome to the company speech. You'd be a bit worried, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking, just what's going on here. There is a third reason, though, for stabilizers and why they might be included. The only trouble is, I don't know what it is. Is it customer expectation, perhaps? Do some customers actually expect to find a stabilizer in the box? Is it a kind of perceived value for money thing, maybe? So if a turntable manufacturer builds a turntable, adds a stabilizer, puts that on the top, it kind of looks complicated, it kind of looks good, it kind of looks impressive. There's that perceived value thing going on. For that third reason, VPI is guilty of that. Now, I have reviewed a few VPI turntables in the past. They all arrive, or at least until recently, to that point anyway, they all arrived with stabilizers. The thing is, VPI does know what it's doing. Also, the turntables sound brilliant. I gave them award-winning ratings. These are turntables that do not need stabilizers though, and yes, they are still supplied in the box. I think at the time, and you can check the reviews yourself, I think I may have called them paperweights, the stabilizers themselves. They were nothing more than paperweights, a complete waste of space, but also a complete waste of money, and you're buying these things, which is also rather silly. So putting VPI to one side then, if you see a turntable that arrives new, complete with a stabilizer in the box, be worried. Ask yourself why. Why is it there? And on that pondering note, I will leave it there and I will say farewell. But before we go, I'll give you an answer to that trivia question. And the question is, what was the 1970 #1 hit that was only cleared for radio play on the BBC after the singer had made a special journey across the Atlantic to overdub 2 syllables on a controversial brand name? And the answer is, well, the answer to the singer, who was part of a band, was the Kinks. The single that all of this hullabaloo referred to was the hit Lola. And in 1970, the BBC would not play the Kinks single as long as the lyrics referred to Coca-Cola. Since the Kinks were on tour in the USA at the time, and the master tapes were in London, Ray Davies had to fly back to the UK to change Coca-Cola to the more generic Cherry Cola. The first session did not go according to plan, so Davies had to make another transatlantic flight before it was done to his satisfaction. So now you know. I'll be back, well, it won't be next week, because I've got a bit of a late Easter break. I worked over the Easter period, so I'm going to take a delayed break and take a weekend off, or maybe more. I have this medical condition. It's called being knackered. So I'm going to address that, probably with a few beers. So who knows? Maybe 47 beers. How about that? And a long walk. It's windy, staggering walk. But in terms of video, well, that'll be the week after. So apologies for no content at that time, but I'll be back with a vengeance soon after. It won't be long, folks. I'll be back then, whenever then is, and usual kind of days, usual kind of times. Take care of yourselves, folks, and I hope to have your company when I do another video. Until then, bye-bye for now.